Welcome to another episode of ExecuBalance. Thank you for joining me today as we dig in and try to find different tips and tricks from some busy executives on how they balance their life. My name is Chad Crow. I'm the host of the podcast as well as CEO of Techwood Digital. I'm a father of 4 and a husband to 1, and so I know what it's like to have to struggle to find balance. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we've got, I think, a very special podcast planned that we've got 2 amazing guests, and we're going to get to dive into, I think, some topics around healthy stress management and what it means to families, how that can impact and help turn you into, as you've used the word resilient, how resilience can help you be a better, honestly, employer and family person and really community person as well. So the way I like to kind of introduce people, if you don't mind, is I love to ask them to just kind of run through some of their current roles that they have. And so, run through your work roles, some of your private roles as well, home life roles. And then we'll go from there. So, Heather, would you mind kind of starting?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks so much for having us on today. This is a great opportunity and honored to be here. My name is Heather Eizenga, and I have a role in Ottawa County in early childhood as the Great Start Collaborative Coordinator. And I just have the privilege of working with some amazing people to basically make things easier for families in the community to find what they need and to connect to resources. And as I began learning about this topic in the last couple of years in my professional life, I just realized just the body of research around this that really isn't magic. Building in resilience and building in protective factors into your life is something that we can all do and help not only ourselves, but our staff and our kids just be more resilient and bounce back when stress comes. And that's where my mind went when you talked about work-life balance. I thought, we can do this. This is really important to do.
Yeah, and you've obviously invited a very special guest that you've learned a lot from, and I think it'll be fun to go back and forth with how you've taken some of the things that you've learned through the research and through your relationship with Leigh. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit as well.
Yeah, so my name is Leigh Moerdyke, and I am, one of my roles is I'm the Prevention and Advocacy Program Manager for Arbor Circle. And through that, I am on the leadership for the Ottawa Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition and also facilitate the Ottawa County Stop Child Abuse and Neglect Council. And really, both of those groups are really what we're focused on is just making sure that everyone in Ottawa County has the most opportunity for health and well-being and resilience and really just thriving.
Awesome. So I think kind of to kick off the conversation again, because we're going to zero in and focus on this topic of building resilience and things and how it affects work-life balance and families as well, especially in the Ottawa district, as you guys have worked so hard for that. And so I think if you could kind of start, Heather, and just kind of talk about the body of research and the topic and kind of introduce, some of the background behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this research is about 10 years in the making. And it's just been really fascinating to learn more about. Really kind of covers and came out of something called Adverse Childhood Experiences, called ACEs. It really might not be well known if you aren't in the health and human services sector working in there, but they really are pretty important. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more with Leigh about it. And sometimes people can think, what happened to them as a child? It's long ago. For some of us, it's been decades ago. But it really does matter. And so it's been kind of fascinating to learn more about ACEs and how it really does play into who we are and how we've developed. So I wondered if Leigh, you wanted to elaborate on that.
Yeah, so the adverse childhood experiences really came out of an original study published in 1999 between the CDC and Kaiser Permanente. I say that sounds like it was a really long time ago. It's been duplicated time after time after time, and it really is consistent. And what it says is that there's 10 adversities, and they are not the only adversities that we can experience in childhood, but these 10 adversities that can be experienced in childhood really have been identified as having long-term health impact, having long-term economic impact, and really having long-term significant impact on our development as humans. They're also preventable. And so that's really sort of why they rose to the top, is because there's opportunity to prevent these. And so the 10 are really childhood abuse, physical neglect, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, but then also things like having a parent who struggled with an untreated mental illness, having substance use disorder in your family, having a parent that was incarcerated, divorce, having violence in your home. And so what happens is that when we have these things happening in our childhood, when they go untreated or there's no intervention, that it really creates a state of toxic stress. And so it's this prolonged exposure to our stress hormone, which is cortisol. And when children at an early age are exposed to this long experience of cortisol, it can change their DNA, it can change how their brain develops, it can change the areas of their brain depending on what their age is. But then there's a lot of ways that we can mitigate it. So you hear, someone say the adverse childhood experiences and it has long-term health impact, but it's not a destiny. There really is ways where we can mitigate that impact for kids, and we can mitigate that impact for ourselves as adults and for the parents in our lives and the other adults in our lives.
I just to chime in some there. I think this is as a topic is relevant twofold for kind of the community we're trying to build, because you have people who are sitting in executive roles within companies who have childhood experiences that are fundamentally sitting in the back of their mind, changing their leadership qualities, and it affects the community, the work community that they're trying to impact. And so I think that's one element of it too. But then we also have another element of what unintentional stresses are we creating at home if we don't intentionally develop skills to mitigate and not have those, and the adverse effect that it can have with the kids that we're raising or the kids that we're mentoring if we don't have kids. I think it's even for the single executive out there that you still can have a massive impact on how a kid develops.
Yeah.
And you can make that good or you can make that bad. And I think I would love to encourage our communities to think of ways to make it good, and I think that's some of the things that we can dive into. I know you've talked specifically about some of the experiences and the things that you've learned through this to start creating that, and I believe there's kind of a set focus of a couple of things that we can focus on as individuals to help start to build and help in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just say, if somebody's interested in learning more about adverse childhood experiences, there is a questionnaire you can find online, and you can take a look at it. You can actually kind of take it, and like Leigh mentioned, there is maybe a score, and you can kind of look at that and know about it. But there's a lot of resources in the community. So if somebody wanted to dig into that and learn more, in Ottawa County, we have Thrive Ottawa. .org, and it's just like it sounds, thriveottawa.org, and people can check that out, get connected to resources and supports. But just to reiterate to Leigh, what I love, it's not a destiny. This is something to know about yourself, and definitely something to address and to look at, but then to know that there's that there's so much that we can do. And I think that's where that really key of resiliency comes in. And again, sort of out of the body of work of the ACEs and looking at that has really bubbled up this resiliency. And that is the bounce back. That is the things that we can do. And so that's just a really hopeful message. I know, Leigh, you and I have talked quite a bit about this too. And it comes down to even just having one supportive person in your life. So what does resiliency mean to you?
Yeah, so resiliency is really, so sort of in the research, resiliency is really your ability to experience hardship and come back from that, or to really go through that and learn from it and grow from it, versus sort of being knocked down from it and not being able to sort of bounce back. And so for me, like one of the hopeful messages that the ACEs brings is that one of the taglines that's often used is it's not what's wrong with me, it's what happened to me. And so how did my earliest experiences sort of impact who I've become? And then, so thinking about it from an adult perspective, then how do we, once we sort of reflect back and think about what's happened to us, sort of how then do we grow from that and learn from that? And one of the biggest supports that really helps with that resiliency is just having positive, supportive people in your life. So you think about if you have a bad day at work, and who do you call on the drive home, right? Like for me, I often will call my mom or my dad or something, and I know that they always have my back, and that they'll be like, oh, well, you can handle this tomorrow. Like just shrug it off today, it'll be fine. But not all of us have that. So then when we think about kids, they also need that. They need someone who's always in their corner, who's saying, you have this, who holds them accountable, but holds them accountable in a safe way. So they need that safe, supportive adult to really help them sort of just have that stability. Sort of, it actually reduces the impact of the cortisol.
Let me, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask more of a personal questions. I know you have at least one kid because he works at Techwood.
Yeah, I do.
Do you have children as well?
Yeah, I have a toddler.
A toddler, all right. And so Ben and
yes, I got two kids, two wonderful kids, and they're grown. They're grown. So I'm at the other end of Leigh. I've got an empty nest. But yeah, this idea of just what I like to is that it doesn't have to be the same person for the whole childhood. Teachers, mentors, coaches, librarian, just the people that that there's always one person that kiddo can go to. Is a very hopeful message too.
What are specific things that you have done to make sure that your child, that Ben, and has that as he's grown up? I would say Ben has grown to be a well-rounded kid, just FYI.
Well, probably despite our influences, but yeah, I think it's just great when you can, as a parent or a caregiver, kind of expand that kiddo's world, introducing them to people in your faith community, making sure they have those people in their lives. It can be even a club or following your kids' interest is often a great place to begin.
Such good advice. I can't believe. So this week we signed my 12-year-old up for fencing class, which is, growing up, fencing was not something like a sport you watch or anything like that. But we found this little fencing school, and I was like, dude, that's so cool. Obviously, I was traveling this week, so I'm not there. We have 4 kids, so my wife's dad was like, I'll take him. And this is kind of the first interaction where he's come to help with this element, and I felt so good in that instance, just knowing that he's going to take my son. He's going to have take him to this class, which will be awesome. But then it was like, we're going to go out for ice cream afterwards. We're going to do this, and it was such a good feeling to know that there was somebody who I respect and admire, and I know is a healthy person who's going to be able to talk to my son about his day, which I know every day has its highs and its lows, especially when you're in middle school. And he's going to have somebody there to process it.
Absolutely. Way to go. Yeah, that was great.
For you, as you have a toddler, not as communicative but growing, what are things that you hope to proactively plan?
Yeah, so she actually spends one day a week with my parents. So I know that she always has two people that are completely supportive of her, have her back, are gonna teach her, but are also going to just be her cheerleaders, right? But I'm also trying to make sure that she has relationships with maybe my friends or her aunts and uncles. And so we do things purposefully where we invite our friends and our community to be a part of her life specifically. Especially over the past year with COVID, where we haven't been able to spend that much time with friends, we'll do little videos and send them back and forth.
Awesome.
So that she really can still stay connected. And so that's really one of the things to think about right now, right? We've all been fairly socially isolated for the past year. So really thinking about how are you intentionally maintaining and or building those relationships and those connections for yourself, and also for children that you have influence over.
Right, because you can't be healthy for a child unless you're healthy first, right? Like, it's hard to create a healthy environment for a kid if you're not healthy. Right. It's hard to create a healthy work environment if you're not healthy. And so having a business partner that's open to being that for you is a key for me. Absolutely.
Yeah. I would also think your audience is primarily business leaders, right? So think about the childcare options in the areas in which your employees are coming from. If they don't have safe places to send their kids, then safe, high quality places to send their kids, then they are going to be absent for work more. They are going to struggle to be productive at work because they're going to be worrying about their kids, or they're going to have to be intervening or staying home to take care of their kids. And so I think that's actually a really important thing to think about as we think about these things, as we think about past trauma, as we think about mitigation of trauma, as we think about how do we build a workforce. One of the first things we need is a childcare workforce, because I know I couldn't be here if my daughter wasn't today she's with her grandparents, but if she didn't have daycare, I couldn't be here.
Today she's having the time of her life eating candy.
She is probably fishing in my dad's pond, honestly.
Oh, that's a good day.
Yeah. Wearing her little ladybug rain shoes and fishing in the pond.
Adorable. Awesome. So, creating real resiliency, having somebody who has your back. Other things?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say probably to, thinking about our staff and those around us, our neighbors. Not everybody has the blessing of family that lives close by. So it's effort to reach out to your neighbors and to connect to those activities and things. But it's well worth it. I mean, like Leigh was saying, it does mitigate the stress and the cortisol buildup. We need community. We need people. But there's other protective factors, Leigh. I mean, that's one of them. That's a key one that we can do. But there's actually other concrete ones that exist.
Yeah. So my favorite is called the Strengthening Families 5 Protective Factors. And I'm going to use my hand because it helps me to remember it. But your first one is really your social emotional health and your social emotional competence. So your ability to really understand your emotions, or the ability of your kids maybe to understand their emotions and then communicate them. And how important is that, even as, if we think about business leaders, right? Like, one of the first rules of supervision is you have to learn how to communicate how you're feeling, right? So
first is understanding how you're feeling first,
right?
And then communicating it.
Exactly.
I had a guy on the podcast. His name's Leonce Crump Jr. He was saying, I have a counselor and a coach.
Nice.
They're two different things. The counselor tells me what's going on and helps me process what's going on in here. Yep. The coach helps me connect it to my world.
Yeah.
So I know I got you off. We're probably gonna have to run through these multiple times, but yeah.
Yeah. So there's social emotional, your social emotional competence is really what it's called. There's knowledge of parenting and child development, and I'd even say like knowledge of your own development, right? So first understanding sort of where you're at in your skill building, but then or helping your kids understand where they're at in their skill building, especially if you have teens.
What type of skills are we talking about?
Any skills. So even like, well, I'll do a quick plug. This month is Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. And so we have a video that will be launching on Arbor Circle's Facebook page on Monday talking about making a pinwheel craft. Well, a pinwheel craft is really cool for a parent to do with a little one, like a toddler, because it helps you see where even their basic skill of cutting a piece of paper is, or how they process through playing with tape, which my daughter like got wound around her fingers and then freaked out. But like those things help you know sort of even that sort of baseline of development helps you know where they're at so that you can teach instead of just getting frustrated when they like throw their trash on the floor. You actually are like, oh, wait, I still need to like teach them how to open the trash can. So
it's huge. It's to know where your kids are at. You know, their lobes, their frontal lobe in their brain is developing, and skills are beyond them at certain stages. And we kind of forget. I forgot. You know, just kind of expect. Hey, you should be able to do this, but maybe not.
That's so convicting to hear right now. I'm
no judgment.
I'm being
no
so honest. Like it's like,
no.
oh my gosh, how many times have I gotten frustrated about something? With just the assumption that I'm like, oh, why didn't they already know that? And it's like, oh, God, they didn't know it. I didn't teach it to them yet. And here I am getting frustrated with them about it. I mean, then that could be, I'm thinking through like situations with my kids. It's like, oh, of course, but situations at work too.
And there's no perfect parent, and you don't have to be a perfect parent to be a great influence and mentor to your kids.
But continuing skill building, continuing education, understanding where other people are in that process as well.
Absolutely. And help me if I forget one, please.
Okay, all right, I will.
So then there's also social connections, right? And we already talked about that. Like we all need friends. We all need those supportive people. Then there's concrete supports in times of need. So we all need food, clothing, water, shelter. So you think about sort of what's been happening, even if we think about just the past year, right? Some of our employees might be we might be hiring. Well, they might have just come off of 6 months of unemployment, right? Or maybe 12 months of unemployment. They might be struggling to put food on the table. So how are we making sure that they're not coming to work hungry? Or if we think about education, right? How do our kids learn? Well, they can't learn if they're hungry, or they can't learn if they're not safe, or they can't learn if they don't have the right clothes for the weather. So I'm just checking. And then the last one is parental resilience. So again, going back to that, just overall resilience and ability to bounce back, the ability to know that what happened today doesn't have to dictate your tomorrow.
And so that's just kind of five set things that if we can focus on, we're going to build resilience in the workforce, resilience as parents, resilience as a community together. And the benefits of that is.
Yeah, the research behind the 5 protective factors really demonstrates that when those things are present in a community and when those things are present for families, that families thrive and that families then have less impact from violence, less impact from, not being safe. They're able to be safe. They're able to be a thriving, healthy family. And that research actually then sort of melds into some adolescent research that really gives basically those same 5 protective factors that we want to build for youth, because that will mean that any sort of trauma that we experienced as children, if we build those protective factors for our youth, they won't pass them down to the next generation.
Awesome. Would love to talk in, and again, if we could take a little bit of an unexpected turn and be more personal, I would love to see some of those, the way we've taken those 5 protective things and implement them and think about them in families and work. Like you mentioned, realizing that there are people coming back to work who've been unemployed. I think that's one thing, but I also think there's security, not necessarily in food scarcity, but also security in knowing that if I make a mistake, I'm not going to get fired. Right? Like you can build that sense by giving people grace
Yeah.
and letting them know that, hey, a mistake's not a death blow. A mistake is an opportunity to learn from, and you can start to create some of that resilience in your organization through that way.
Absolutely. I actually just had a conversation today about like, hey, this mistake you made, we've all made it. We've all been there. You take it, you eat the little bit of crow, you then take the learning from it, and you don't make the same mistake.
Well, that's it. Is like we'll work hard to fix mistakes for sure, but we're going to try to fix them in a way that we only have to fix them once.
Yeah. Yep.
Mistakes are mandatory. That's what we have talk about too. It's like, we're people, we're humans. We're going to make mistakes. We try and learn from them and do what we can to fix it. But you got to give ourselves grace and then grace to those around us, especially during these tough times, and grace to our kids too. It's not easy.
I spend a lot of time telling my team about all of the sort of programs and projects that I've planned that really should have been awesome, and no one showed up. And, like it's happened to me more times than I ever care to admit. But I don't just sit there and go, oh, let me just throw everything out and just give up. Instead, I look to, okay, did I do everything in my power? And then if not, what can I do differently next time? What can I learn from this? You learn scheduling is really important. Looking at sort of even the weather patterns can really impact, programming we do sometimes. And so you learn from it. And then next time you make it better, or you realize, oh, I didn't take enough time to promote that. So I learn from that and I make it better. And that really, doing that repeatedly is really what helps build that resilience muscle. They talk a lot about like resilience being natural, and resilience is a little bit natural, but it's also really learned. And that's what those supportive people do in your life, right? They help you learn that muscle. It's really something you have to build and cultivate within yourself.
I had Kevin Williams on the podcast, and he talked about he has a wall of failures at his house, and that's an indication that he obviously has some healthy resilience that he's built over the time, but he's been able to take those failures and learn from them, and then he sticks them on the wall so he can remember them. He's even down to he was talking about he got cut from a team when he was younger. He's like, I got that team picture up on my wall, and I'm not in it.
Boy, yeah, he's really owning it. I've heard families, when they're talking to kids or even at a dinner together, just talk about, okay, we like to talk about our successes, but how did you fail today? And what'd you learn from it? And kind of not making it the elephant in the room, just knowing, hey, we all failed today in some way. Let's take a look at it. Let's talk about it, and let's talk about what we learned from it. So that's kind of a neat tool too to use.
Yeah, I like that.
Talking about it too, and I think a lot of times too, we have to be very intentional about the way we talk about it too. It's amazing how many things that have a negative context that I understand, and my kid now understands because I talked about it with a sad face. I mean, I simply talked about it with a sad face. But if you can talk about failure without a sad face, it's not as scary.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I think that's with employees as well.
Definitely.
Awesome. What are other kind of lessons learned as you guys? I know you have a workforce of 9. You've got a team as well.
We do, yeah. So I'm at the Ottawa Area Intermediate School District, and we're in early childhood department. So got a lot of fun people that I work with. And yeah, we're all about supporting parents, really connecting parents to one another. We've got parent coalition meetings that happen, which is a resiliency. We just get together and we talk about our failures and we talk about our successes and we learn together. Help Me Grow is a toll-free number. Anybody can give us a call and learn about what's happening in pregnancy to age 5. It can be a no man's land to navigate and to get connected. So we want to build those protective factors and that resiliency in, and work closely with Leigh and other partners in the community to do the same.
And it sounds like really what you're trying to do and sit into for the community, as being some of that safe space, being some of that tool provider. As an employer, is that something that I could get involved with the area, and how can I help connect you to the people who you can provide that service to?
That would be fantastic. Absolutely. I think a good fit is human resources, getting staff connected to the resources they need for their families. And Leigh mentioned that with childcare can be very difficult to find. And we got Help Me Grow has care coordinators that man the line, and we have English and Spanish speaking coordinators to help families get connected to their development of their children, to other parents for that resiliency and that community. So we were just really blessed with resources in Ottawa County. But we've heard it's hard to find them. It's a bit of a part-time job, full-time job sometimes to find what you need. So we're here to help.
Awesome. If people want to learn more, where would they go again?
Well, they can find our programs for Arbor Circle at arborcircle.org, or we do have a Facebook page. So that's just a really simple way. If you want to actually find some of our events going on, then arborcircle.org/events is a really good opportunity to see. Like, we have our parenting classes and stuff listed up there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. The openness to answer questions and sharing some of the research that you guys have done. I think these are some great tools for us to stock away in our belt, but then also a great place for us to remember other people in the community, and how can we provide opportunities so that everybody can enjoy resiliency and the benefits of that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us.